Coming up now in your spoiler-free wrestling news update, we have news on how long Rhea Ripley is going to be out of action. We also have news on Jon Moxley's schedule with New Japan Pro Wrestling now that he's the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. And Rossy Ogawa has announced his new promotion finally. All that and more coming up now. Rhea Ripley is injured and she has vacated the Women's World Heavyweight Championship. This all took place on WWE Raw last night. Ripley came out, her arm was in a sling. She announced that she's going to be out, quote, quite a few months. And this all stemmed from Liv Morgan's backstage attack on Rhea Ripley that happened on last week's WWE Raw. So we have some new information regarding just what Ripley's injury is and how long she is expected to be out of action. So on Wrestling Observer Radio, Brian Alvarez said that Ripley has a sprained AC joint. So I know a lot of people watching the video of that attack thought maybe when Liv fired the chair at the back of Ripley's head, that was what caused the injury. And no, that was not it at all. Ripley injured her shoulder when she was thrown into the wall during that backstage altercation. So for this type of injury, it is normally 4 to 6 weeks to regain mobility, but up to 3 months for athletes to get back in the game. So we're looking at maybe around July, mid-July to kind of August for Rhea Ripley's return. That's in time for SummerSlam. And one might imagine she'll be looking to go on her own little revenge tour targeting Liv Morgan. Jon Moxley is the new IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. He defeated Tetsuya Naito for that title at Windy City Riot on Friday. And in the process, Moxley is now the only person to have ever won the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, the WWE Championship, and the AEW World Championship. So he's in a league of his own regarding that. Now, there were some concerns after Moxley won the title that maybe he's going to be an absentee champion. However, we have now learned that is not the case. So New Japan Pro Wrestling has announced the cards for Wrestling Dontaku on May 3rd and May 4th. There was also several title matches that are scheduled for the Road 2 events leading up to Wrestling Dontaku on May 3rd. So that's a Friday, and that's the first night of Wrestling Dontaku. Zack Sabre Jr. will defend the New Japan Pro Wrestling World Television title that he just regained from Matt Riddle at Windy City Riot. He'll defend that against Jeff Cobb. And that match is kind of significant because at Dontaku last year, when Zack Sabre Jr. was champion and Cobb challenged him, they went to a time limit draw. There will be a grudge match between Yota Tsuji and David Finlay. And the IWGP Global Champion, Nick Nemeth, will defend for the first time against Hiroshi Tanahashi. That match was probably supposed to happen at Windy City Riot, but Tanahashi suffered an ankle injury. Then the following night, Wrestling Dontaku on May 4th. Now, I know there will be a lot of Star Wars content coming out that day, but if you get a chance, New Japan Pro Wrestling will also have the second night of Wrestling Dontaku. IWGP Tag Team Champions Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi will defend against Kenta and Chase Owens on that show. Never Openweight Champion Shingo Takagi will defend against Gabe Kidd. And the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Jon Moxley makes his first defense of that title against Ren Narita. So Narita had attacked Moxley after the main event of Windy City Riot, as Moxley was attempting to announce that he was awarding a title shot to his mentee, his young boy, Shota Umino. Speaking of the Windy City Riot show in Chicago, Jack Perry received a very polarized reaction. There was definitely Jack Perry haters, of course, in Chicago, where CM Punk's hometown, but there were also people that were supporting him as well. And it seemed to be, there were like rotating chants. There was a Cry Me a River chant, which I guess was done by the Jack Perry supporters. There was a You Got Punked Out chant. There was a CM Punk chant. But there was definitely people that were supporting Jack Perry there as well. So if it was the plan, if it was AEW's plan to build up this hype around Jack Perry, if it was AEW's plan when releasing the footage of the backstage altercation with CM Punk, that it would lead to a bigger, more important feeling reaction for Jack Perry, they might have done that. However, Friday night was in Chicago. It's not clear if that's going to be representative of how crowds elsewhere respond to Jack Perry. Big E gave a bit of an injury update on Twitter recently. He wrote that he had neck scans done of his injury some 2 years after he suffered it, and things are still unchanged in his recovery. So here's what Big E wrote. He said, "Hey, all. 2-year neck scans are in. Things are unchanged. My C1 is healed fibrously, but has not formed new bone. I'm not medically cleared, and truthfully, I may never be cleared, but I am blessed to be free of pain, immensely happy, and otherwise healthy. Life is good." So it does seem now we're 2 years past when Big E was injured. I mean, you never know what the future is going to hold. We saw guys like Adam Copeland lose their careers due to neck injuries and then eventually get them back. Not saying that's going to happen here, not saying that it's not. Big E definitely seems to be taking the viewpoint that if he never wrestles again, that's fine. Kenny Omega made several comments on a recent video game stream that has caused headlines around the wrestling world. I won't go into too much detail about them. If you want to read the quotes or listen to the interview, it's out there. But he was asked about his current status with CM Punk, what his relationship with CM Punk is like, and Omega basically said, like, "Hey, we're good now. We've never been bad." He said, "Status with Punk right now, I don't know. It's just mutual respect. We reached out to each other." Here's the thing: I can't really think of anyone that I dislike or have like an issue with, especially an issue with wrestling. It's not like, "Hey, we're good now." It's we were never bad. Honestly, if it weren't for a complete other factor, we would have been able to have that talk on the night of Brawlout. There's no issue between him and I, as far as I know. I don't think there is at all. I don't want to seem standoffish or like secretive about what happened. Like, yes, there's legalities and all that stuff, but even if there wasn't, and I know this will sound weird because I've done a lot of comedy stuff in wrestling, but like, I'm actually not a huge fan of pulling back the curtain on stuff that doesn't need to be out in public. That's why I'm saying, like, if for whatever reason guys were to fight or whatever, like, it's not for the public to know. That's just for them to air out their stuff and to get it out of their system. That's all I mean. So I thought that was interesting, but Omega was basically saying, "Look, I've talked to Punk since, and we've never had a problem." Obviously, Punk and the Young Bucks did. Punk and Jack Perry did. But I think it's kind of interesting, this point where Omega was sort of taking a step back and kind of saying, like, "Look, I'm actually not as much a part of this drama as maybe some are perceiving I am." Very interesting news story came out. In previous videos, we've talked about Vince McMahon has been selling his TKO Group Holdings stock, and he's been selling them in big chunks. And I think the last time they sold it, he's below 7% now. And it's an important threshold because that means he no longer has to the company no longer has to publicly announce that he sold his shares. So in an SEC filing released last week, it was revealed that Vince McMahon has listed all of his total shares for sale. So McMahon's current stock value is more than $786 million. He's already sold more than $1.5 billion. Now, this has left a lot of people wondering, well, what is Vince McMahon going to do with that money? $1.5 billion. And by the end of this, once he's sold everything, it's going to be closer to $2.5 billion. Like, what's he going to do with this money? Is he going to start a new company? Is he going to, like, what? And the truth is, nobody knows. He's 78 years old. I have to imagine it's hard to think long term on anything when you're 78 years old. But that's the story. Soon, Vince McMahon might have 0% ownership of WWE. And continuing with WWE, Steve Austin not being at WrestleMania 40 was addressed in the latest edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and Dave Meltzer wrote that a financial agreement between the two parties could not be reached for Austin to be there. Well, so Meltzer wrote, "I think a lot of people expected Steve Austin to come out next and take out Rock with a stunner, and then Rhodes would start hitting Crossroads and win the title. Undertaker's gong hit, and he choke slammed and took out Rock. Austin was the person originally earmarked for that spot, but in the end, they couldn't reach a financial agreement, and Undertaker was put in his place." Some big news coming out of Japan as Stardom co-founder Rossy Ogawa has announced his new promotion. So if you're not familiar with Rossy Ogawa, he is the co-founder of Stardom. However, he sold that company to Bushi Road. Bushi Road is the parent company of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Ogawa had been working at Bushi Road running Stardom up until February when he was fired. Bushi Road, after they fired him, they went to the press and said that Ogawa had been poaching talent for a new promotion. Ogawa's contract with Bushi Road was actually going to expire just like a couple of weeks later or something like that. They held a press conference today, and Ogawa officially announced that his new company is called Marigold Dream Star Fighting. He was joined by Julia at the press conference. Of course, in previous videos, we've noted that Julia and Rossy Ogawa were WWE's guests during WrestleMania 40 weekend. Julia is expected to end up in WWE at some point, but she is going to help Rossy Ogawa start up this new promotion. And their first event is going to be held on May 20th in Korakuen Hall in Tokyo. And Julia is going to be in the main event of that show. It'll be Julia and a partner to be named. So it could be some person we didn't know was going to end up in this promotion against Saray and a mystery partner as well. And so that first event will be titled Marigold Fields Forever, May 20th, Korakuen Hall, and it will air on the Wrestle Universe streaming service. That's the streaming service for DDT Pro Wrestling and for Pro Wrestling Noah. So there is going to be some cross promotion, at least with Noah and Marigold. We saw Julia was on one of their Monday Magic shows not long ago, and more wrestlers from the Marigold roster turned up on Noah's Magic Monday today as well. Logan Paul announced that him and his fiance, Dutch supermodel Nina Agdal, are expecting their first child together. The couple has been together since 2022. They announced last year, was it last July? Last summer at some point, that they were engaged. And so TMZ is reporting that Agdale is a few months along in her pregnancy. And so you can debate whether this is good or bad news, but Logan Paul is reproducing. The Undertaker mentioned on his 6 Feet Under podcast that his involvement in the WrestleMania 40 main event gave him a closure on his career. Just up on your screen now, Taker said, "I've been struggling with it since I retired, but this weekend gave me closure. It really did. It was fun. Obviously, it was fun doing this for as long as I have and being involved in that and how important that storyline was. But when it was over and I'm running out of the building, I'm like, I'm good now." But basically saying, like, when I go to WWE events or go to WrestleMania weekend, I always have this urge to perform. But, I got to perform at WrestleMania this week and I kind of feel like, all right, I'm good now. And that's going to do it for this video, everyone. Make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the notifications bell so you don't miss out on any. And that's going to do it for this video, everyone. Make sure you click the like button, the subscribe button, and the notifications bell, and we'll see you again next video.